It's the weekend, which means we have ourselves some Vancouver Canucks news and notes from Rick Dhaliwal and the folks on Halford and Brough from earlier yesterday. This is enough fodder for us to chew on throughout the course of the weekend, and so I wanted to give some shout-outs over to, of course, the Sportsnet 650 crew, Halford, Brough, Rick Dhaliwal from Donnie and Dolly, and also a big shout-out over to Canucks News Summaries, who went out there and summarized yesterday's Dhaliwal interview with Halbro. We have some Vancouver Canucks trade updates. We have some guys who have maybe fallen out of favor. We have guys who will apparently want to stay. Let's dive into it all here, courtesy of Canucks News Summaries, starting out with the opening part of the Dhaliwal radio hit. This is what is talked about in regards to Vancouver Canucks dressing room culture. 1. Brock Boeser will not ask for a trade. 2. Teddy Blueger is saying he might re-sign. And number 3, Jake Debrusk has 1 foot out the door already, and he should be traded this offseason. Oh, Brock. What an absolute team player. Unlike Quinn Hughes, whom it was very obvious the Vancouver Canucks were not going to keep, Brock Boeser continues to defy the odds. After a season last year where we all understood he was disappointing, he went from 40 goals to 25, and this season he's on pace for 21. When Brock Boeser decided to stay with the Vancouver Canucks upon Vancouver's failed attempt at acquiring Christian Dvorak, it certainly was a breath of fresh air to see a player who wanted to stay in Vancouver. Not because better things were ahead, not because the team was projected to winning all these awards and championships, but straight up just because he loved it here. And that's exactly what we had seen out of Brock ever since he was a part of the Canucks back in 2017-18. He debuted, he was really good, he had some good years, he had some bad years, but throughout the entire course of Brock Boeser's time as a Canuck, you can never say he wasn't a good pro. He loved it here, and it was very obvious. And even throughout the course of this rebuild, it seems like Brock is going to want to stick around. He signed in Vancouver for the long haul. He will be a part of it no matter what. And that's kind of romantic, I'm not going to lie. Meanwhile, Teddy Blueger is saying that he might re-sign because his family likes the city. Dhaliwal also says here he wonders if Blueger would take a more term, lesser AAV kind of contract in order to stay in Vancouver. You know, I understand the idea that says, hey, Vancouver doesn't really have much to gain when it comes to keeping guys around that are going to be aging into their 30s and players that may not necessarily help the team with a rebuild long term. But Teddy Blueger is one of these guys where if it is absolutely true that the Canucks could not get anything for him on the trade market, which I'm more inclined to believe now after seeing like, hey, Scott Laughton only got a second-round pick. If Scott Laughton was worth a second, then what was Teddy Blueger worth? A 6th or a 7th? Obviously, Vancouver would have more use out of a 6th or a 7th round pick. But if they just couldn't get it, and Teddy Blueger doesn't want to depart the Vancouver Canucks, he wants to stay in Vancouver, his family likes it here, then obviously it would be a reasonable bet to keep this guy around, especially when you consider the veteran leadership. The fact that he's got 11 points in 18 games this season, he's been very good point production-wise, but then again, he was hurt for most of the season, and his Olympic showcase wasn't really that great. From that angle, I can understand why Teddy Blueger didn't really fetch anything on the trade market, and why he's still a Canuck today. There also was a conversation on Jake Debrusk and how he's got 1 foot out the door. Yeah, that makes sense, honestly. As much as Jake Debrusk will say all the right things and we can understand that he probably would still be a good pro had he stayed in Vancouver, this guy signed on to be with a team that was able to be a championship caliber team. That's the season that Jake Debrusk decided to come to Vancouver after they made the second round. Debrusk has had 2 years with the Canucks, one where he had scored 28 goals, another where he was on pace for 18. And the team just doesn't really align with the profile that he has and the timeline of success that Debrusk signed up for initially. So seeing him and his $5.5 million cap hit potentially be moved, it's not all too surprising in my opinion. Let's go out there and read some of these other notes here. Nils Hoglander, there's a conversation about him. None of the Canucks coaches have ever believed in Hoglander, which is absolutely downright disappointing when you think about it. The guy was a 20-goal scorer in the past. Dhaliwal wonders about Hoglander's future and whether or not he could end up like Vasily Podkolzin, who is doing some pretty good things in Edmonton right now. Not even with Leon Draisaitl. Nils Hoglander, if you take a look at his overall profile, yes, he was a former 24-goal guy, but that was 2 years ago. And this season, he's only on pace for 2 goals and 5 points in 42 games. He is 25 years old, Nils Hoglander, and after posting up a 20-goal season at 23 years old, you obviously thought that there was more to come out of this dude. It just hasn't happened with the Vancouver Canucks, and we'll see whether or not it does happen with another team at this point. Speaking about that Vasily Podkolzin, Rick Dhaliwal mentions him. Pods was very well liked by management and teammates in Vancouver, and a lot of his production is because of his opportunity to play with Draisaitl, which actually was refuted on social media. People did go out there and talk about how that's not actually true. Finally, let's go over to these Vancouver Canucks notes. NCAA free agents. The Canucks were in on Tyson Gross, but his dad works for the Calgary Flames. That's why he ended up signing there. Dhaliwal says he's been told the Canucks are not after TJ Hughes, the supposed top NCAA free agent this year out of Michigan and their Wolverine system. The Canucks are still poking around on other free agents, but they haven't really decided on whom it is. Also, a lot of these guys haven't decided if they're going to turn pro. Agents like the Canucks development pipeline with the Sedins and Abbotsford. He also referenced Max Sasson signing because of the appeal of the Sedins. The Canucks can offer opportunity to many of these NCAA guys. In regards to the free agent landscape, Dhaliwal mentions how it's a very weak market this offseason. He also believes the Canucks will look at adding 1 or 2 veterans as UFAs to add leadership. He mentions Colton Sissons and Luke Shen. And then in regards to Filip Chytil, Dhaliwal says he has heard that Chytil is feeling better. So at the end of the day, I think the biggest update that we could get from Rick Dhaliwal's hit on Donnie and Dolly, on Halford and Bruff, again, big shout out over to Canucks News Summaries for providing us with the scoop, is what could be happening with these trades. Brock Boeser, for all intents and purposes, it looks like this guy is going to stay in Vancouver. He wants to be a Canuck. It does not matter that the team is going to be bad. He is okay with it, and that is awesome. Jake Debrusk, probably on his way out. We will see another team hopefully take a chance and give Jake a more middle six friendly scoring role. Vancouver has been trying to give that to him, but hey, Elias Pettersson can't really get going, and there isn't really a definitive second-line center on this team. So it's very difficult for Jake Debrusk to come into Vancouver and continue with the production he had expected. I know he said that if he was given the opportunity to change the past, he wouldn't have. He still would have signed the contract with Vancouver, which is very admirable. But this guy does not have the same history with the Canucks like Brock Boeser does. It's not like I'm expecting him to go out there and commit to a team that he's only been a part of for 2 seasons, even though they suck. Nils Hoglander, we'll see what happens with him if he ends up becoming a really nice middle-to-top 6 scoring piece with another team. We may have to wait and see whether or not that's actually in the cards. But with all that said, I want you to let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. How do you feel about these Vancouver Canucks trade updates? From Jake Debrusk on his way out, to Brock Boeser sticking around, and to Nils Hoglander and his lack of production. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.